right. Welcome to the You're a Tourist podcast, where we get serious and share a laugh or two about all of the good, the bad, and the ugly parts of tourism that you may or may not have ever even thought about. Hopefully by the end of the episode, we can provide you, the listeners, with a few simple changes that you can make to help you be a better tourist. I'm your host, Katie Dudley, and today we're going to be talking about navigating tourism while neurodivergent. Joining me for this topic today is a New York-based comedian and single mother to a 9-year-old autistic son. Welcome to the show, the very funny Katie Blunt.
Thanks for having me.
I get into my host mode there as though we've got a whole audience here that's going to go, woo!
I love it.
All right, Katie. So before we jump into the topic of the day today, I like to play a game with all of my guests called Tourist in the News. All right. We all know that happens all the time. The rules of the game are very simple. I'm going to read a headline, and you, for this particular one, every time we guess a little something different, but for you, you're going to answer what that tourist did. So the tourist has found themselves in a little bit of trouble, and you're going to guess what that was. Okay? I guess the other part of it, it's early in the morning. I got to make sure I say all of my rules. The other part of it is you get up to 3 clarifying questions to help you make your guess. Okay? Yeah. Okay, so here we go. Headline number 1. Russian tourist faces deportation from Indonesia after posting what in Bali?
After posting?
Mm-hmm.
A Russian tourist. After posting. Oh my gosh, I like the first word that came to mind is bail, but I'm like, that's not possible. That's not it. No. Posting a picture of something. I'm allowed 3 questions. Is the post drug related, substance related?
Ooh, good question. It is not.
Okay. Is it sensual? Is it somehow related to the body? I don't know what I'm allowed to do.
It is related to the body. Yeah.
Okay. Posting in Indonesia. I'm gonna say like a naked picture. Was it a naked picture?
Yes.
Oh,
yes. You came out of the gate strong. Look at this. Yes. They were.
What specifically was posted?
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know what part of his body, but I feel like I can guess. Because the article says a Russian tourist who took a semi-nude photo at a sacred Bali site may be deported after the picture went viral online. So I don't know, though. I don't know if you could do like a full-on frontal like dick pic online, because they shut that down pretty quick.
A Russian
So
tourist.
I don't know. Are you checking it out?
It was a woman. I assumed it was a woman.
Oh no, it's a guy. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. He's identified only by his first name, Yuri. But the problem is, so it says it shared a picture of himself naked so no, he was naked from the waist down at Mount Agung, the highest point on the Indonesian island. So here's the issue, is that Hindu Balinese believe that the volcano represents the god Shiva, and a permit is required for anyone who wishes to hike it. But also, Shiva destroys the universe in a continuous circle of rebirths where the locals revere the gods and believe that if you anger them, an eruption will occur. Yeah. So it's a pretty big deal. And he replaced his video recently with one of him apologizing and says, there is no excuse for my actions. The only thing that led to what happened was my personal ignorance.
That's actually nice. I thought it sounded like such a malicious act to be like, I'm going to go to this sacred space and just stick my body in this
Right.
place of God. You know what I mean? Like, so that
Yeah.
actually, that feels better. I feel like
It
what a
does.
roller coaster of emotions I just had. I Googled Russian tourist deportation, and I see a
Mhm.
Russian woman posted a nude photo of
Oh,
herself in front of a sacred tree has been deported from Bali.
God damn it.
What what's with
Rush.
all these Russians going to
Keep
Bali?
I know they're going to Bali and they can't keep their goddamn clothes on. like,
I guess it's just
like
they're so inexperienced with warm weather. They just
you get warm weather and like a taste of freedom, and the clothes come off.
clothes
The
come right off.
clothes. Oh gosh. Let's
So
just make
funny.
that a rule, folks. Especially, I didn't realize it, but to all the Russian listeners out there, just, keep your clothes on.
Keep
Keep
it
your
in your
clothes on. We can
pants.
all still have a good time together. The pictures can still look good just with
Yeah.
clothes on.
Who would have thought that there'd
Okay.
be an exodus of Russian tourists with no clothes
Well,
from Bali?
yeah. Well, I was reading though, whenever I was looking into this, that apparently there is, because a bunch of Russian folks, um, in an attempt to kind of evade the draft. I don't know if that's what they call it, the
Mhm.
draft essentially, but going to war. So
Mhm.
that Bali did have an influx, and
Oh,
a spokesperson did say that they're not behaving well. That as a whole, the Russians who are coming to stay are not behaving well as tourists. So
and
again,
they've embraced the make love not war
there you
philosophy.
go.
I
There,
think so.
there you go.
Yeah.
We talk about it all the time. Okay. For fear that I'm going to say too much here. Okay, headline number 2. And
All right.
now I'm going to be really impressed if you can do 2 for 2. But let's see. We're on a hot streak. Headline number 2. Clueless Yellowstone visitor does what? Now, this is just halfway through. Clueless Yellowstone visitor does what after illegally dipping hand in 174-degree hot spring? So after they dipped it, what did they do?
Did they put it in another spring that was hotter than the 175-degree one? What?
That's a good guess. That's a good guess. Uh, no, they ran around screaming, "It's hot."
Oh,
That was it. That was the whole headline. That was the whole headline.
I don't know
So
why I
there
didn't
you
get
go.
that. I feel like I should have gotten that.
You would
I
think, yeah, you would think that was the natural reaction of just, yeah,
it's
the signs, the steam, any of that could just kind of tell you that it's hot. But with all the fake news out there, Katie, you got to just
I
test
mean,
it for yourself. You got to
that'll
stick
melt
your
your hand.
hand.
Wouldn't that melt your hand? I feel like you would just, that's serious burns.
It is. This gets real dark. Well,
Oh,
not really. So for the person who did it, essentially the person who did it just got off of they were in Yellowstone, got off of the boardwalks, went down, stuck their hand into it. The person videoing it didn't stop them, but was talking about how stupid they were. But they had, yeah, so it's like we just let people kill
be
themselves in
careful when
Yellowstone,
you're talking.
apparently. Yeah, we're just like, keep going. But yes, so no, there was a statement from the National Park Service um, saying that water in hot springs can cause severe or fatal burns. More than 20 people have died from burns.
Yikes.
Last summer, here's where it gets a little dark. Last summer, there was a human foot in a shoe found floating in Yellowstone's Abyss Pool. And in 2016, they think a visitor may have died and completely dissolved after soaking in a scalding Yellowstone hot spring,
Oh my
because
gosh.
no remains were ever discovered. So, yeah, folks, it's not fun and games out there. Don't
Stay
be
out of the
dipping your
springs.
hand.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Stay out
yeah,
of the springs in
it,
Yellowstone.
it's hot. Yeah, as that
It's
woman
hot.
pointed out, it's hot. Maybe
It's
that's it. Maybe they just need to put a picture of her on the sign with like a word bubble that says it's hot. And
hot.
maybe that's what people will listen
Oh, man.
to.
That's So scary. Human foot.
I gotta,
Inside.
yeah. So yeah, there's lots of questions about the human foot. Of yeah, is that connected to the visitor that they think dissolved, or did somebody just lose a foot and then they were too embarrassed and they were like, "Well, honey, we're going home 1 foot less. We
Oh,
came here with 4. We're going home with 3. Don't tell anybody."
so much definitely
Um,
eaten. I feel like the only way you leave a foot is if you get eaten. I
yeah.
feel like.
Oh, yeah. And a dumping ground for I don't know, for the bears, for the grizzlies.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We got all kinds of stuff about Yellowstone we could do, but let's see. We're going to go out of the country. I am going to give you a little hint and say we're going back out of the country
Okay.
for this last one. So the last one is tourists were fined for what? For doing what? As rangers warn of rising wild dog attacks.
Wait, say that one more time. Tourists were what? What was the middle
They
part?
were they were fined for what? As rangers warn of rising wild dog attacks.
Fined for. I'd imagine it would be like leaving garbage outside. Do they leave their
Yeah,
garbage outside?
you would think. Uh, no, the answer is taking dingo selfies.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh wow.
so
If I'd have gotten dingoes, I mean, that would have been
I
something.
know now that would
Imagine,
have
like, I think
really.
you might have been taking a selfie with dingoes.
I think the only answer that this could point to, Katie, is taking selfies with dingoes.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't have guessed that? Yes, yes. So apparently, this is becoming a huge problem. 2 tourists who snapped selfies with dingoes have been fined more than $1,500 each for
Wow.
taking the extremely dangerous decision to interact with the native wild dogs, following a recent spat of ferocious attacks. Um, what was it? One woman laid down next to a pack of sleeping dingo pups. According to authorities, she was lucky the mother of the pups weren't nearby.
Mm-hmm.
And then another woman appeared in a selfie video posted to social media that showed her with a growling dingo. And the guy said the dingo was clearly exhibiting dominance testing behaviors.
Yikes.
So don't do it, folks. Folks, they're wild dogs. They're wild animals. They don't want to take selfies with you.
Right.
Don't risk it. So there we go.
Great.
There we go. So, just a little reminder of who we're working with here as far as tourists. Again, I love to laugh, we'll just say laugh about tourists. Maybe I'll say I laugh with them instead of at them. But for some reason, when we're on vacation, our brains shut off and we start doing really stupid things. And sometimes we can do some inconsiderate things and things like that. So we're going to jump right into our topic then today, and that's specifically traveling with neurodivergent children. This is a topic I don't know anything about, so that's why, Katie, we're just going to pick your brain and see something, what it's like. So we're going to kick it off. Just tell us a little bit about you. I know you very funny, do comedy in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a comedian. I also tutor for money.
Mm.
So I tutor like
We've all got to do something for money.
STEM
Yeah.
subjects. Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, it's so hard to make. Nobody has any money right now. It's like such
Right.
an incredibly difficult period of time. But yeah,
Exactly.
so I'm a comedian. I perform in New York. I do travel quite a bit. I've
Mm.
performed in Colorado, Martha's Vineyard, San Francisco, San Diego, Los Angeles, Las Vegas. And I've been a single mom for 7 years. So my son is now 9. I've been a single mom since he was 2. And I've traveled with him quite a bit and taken him to different places. There's
Yeah.
definitely a distinction between traveling with a second co-parent versus traveling alone.
Oh, yeah.
Element of the difficulty of carrying everything and managing him. And then there's also the aspect of like where we're going and kind of what's going on there.
Yeah.
So my son has autism, or he's autistic. He has moderate autism. So or is moderately autistic. So what that means is that
Mhm.
he can speak. Some kids with autism are nonverbal. It's so funny because I have this viral post right now on Instagram, and I have all these people telling me words I should be using to describe my son. And I'm so anxious about it. It's such a strange thing because
Really?
I mean, it's such a wild thing. I mean, I'm in
Yeah.
this open mic scene, I'm in the comedy
Yeah.
scene, and I hear people using horrible ways to describe
Oh, yeah.
autism. And so it's so funny,
Yeah.
the distinction between is autistic versus has autism is something that has never
Mhm.
offended me, but I think, I'm not, to my knowledge, not autistic, but according to the
Yeah.
internet, some people have been posting that I probably am. But it's not,
Oh, really?
oh yeah.
Yeah, the internet's just out there giving you
Yeah,
all kinds of tips about your
yeah.
life.
All kinds of, it's wonderful to be diagnosed by trolls. But yeah, that's great.
Right.
Time.
Yeah.
But my son, he is verbal, but
Mhm.
he did have quite a delay, and so until about age 4 he had very limited language. And usually when
Mm.
you remove language, the thing that results is just like a lot of, if you think about it, if you
Mm.
didn't have the ability to speak, if you didn't have the ability to
Mhm.
communicate, your only recourse is physical. So you can have,
Sure, yeah.
out physically, screaming and crying, that kind of thing, because it's like
Mm.
you're sort of trapped in a situation. If you're in a situation you don't want to be in and you can't communicate that, it's just like a big tantrum. So my son used to have
Right.
tantrums, and sometimes these really big sensory tantrums, that were quite difficult
Mhm.
to navigate. He doesn't have them anymore. I don't know.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, which is really nice. He hasn't had
I
anything
I
like that in a very long
yeah.
time. I feel so grateful for it, and I wish I had known when he was that little that it would go away,
Mhm.
because the thing that would always like make my heart race was like, what do I do when he's 16? What do I do when I
Um,
empower me?
yeah.
And so that was so scary. But and I don't know what different people might experience, but for me,
Mhm.
has dissipated a lot. And I think a lot of it has to do with
Yeah.
me learning more about how to um, communicate with him, and how to be with him.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
So can
that
you explain just kind of briefly, like when you say sensory tantrum, like what
oh,
is it? What could start
so
it? What does it look
so
like?
my understanding of that, and I could be mistaken,
Mhm.
and I'm sure if we post this on the internet, people will explain it for us. But
I'm sure.
yeah, but my understanding of it is that, let's say a kid is upset because he can't get ice cream. You're like, you can't have ice cream.
Mhm.
He has a huge
Mhm.
meltdown. You buy him the ice cream. You're holding the ice cream in front of him. He can't see it anymore. It's like he's just seeing red.
Oh,
So it's like
oh,
nothing can alleviate the the tantrum, and so you're
gotcha.
just kind of in it, and it's extensive. There's no way to quiet it. There's no way to calm it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it can
So I'm
be,
sure, yeah, that
yeah.
that could be anxiety, especially like when we are thinking about travel and like
Mhm.
anxiety inducing for you of when you say like that kind of helpless feeling of you can't stop it and it's not anyone's fault. It's
Right. Yeah, that's very
yeah.
true. Exactly. It's not, it's certainly not the child's fault. They're just having
Mhm.
a really difficult experience, and you're there trying to coax them through it. But um,
Mhm.
I think what can be difficult is it's not just like the parent child interaction. It can also be
Mhm.
the way that you're looked at by the people around you, and the way that other parents might think that you're doing something wrong. That can be really tough. And that's something I do have
Yeah.
a story about, um
Yeah.
relating to
Well,
our
good.
first. to Disney World. But
Oh, yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead. Yeah, tell us about that. Disney? Oh,
Disney World. So the
yeah.
time I decided to take my son to Disney World by myself, just me
Ooh,
and my son. And
okay.
I met my brother and his wife and their 3 children when I got there. They were able to stay for a couple of days, but it was like
Mm-hmm.
10 days in Disney World with me
Oh.
and my son. And for me, it was like, oh, I never went to Disney World as a kid. So it was like, oh, I'm
Mm-hmm.
so excited to give him this experience. And at the time I was tutoring a boy with cerebral palsy, a 16, 17-year-old boy with cerebral palsy who was paraplegic. So he was in a wheelchair. And I remember him,
Mm-hmm.
he just loved Disney World, was like, oh, they're so
Uh,
accommodating. They'll take such good care of you. They really take care of kids with disabilities. Like I would talk about my son, my autistic son, with this other boy all the time. And we would talk about sort of
yeah.
navigating with disability. Um, and obviously it's a different type, but I didn't, I
Mm-hmm.
was just like, oh, they're going to be so accommodating. It's going to be so great. And it was horrible. it was,
Oh,
it was,
no.
oh, let me take him to this
Because
place.
that's my thought process too. I've heard that Disney is like so great with this. Okay.
know.
Tell
Well,
us about it.
there were some aspects that were good, and I want to highlight those too. But um,
Mm-hmm.
it was like, oh, let me take him to this place that is completely unfamiliar, where we have bright lights and sounds and tons of people and just everything that could possibly trigger um, an alarm. And then
Uh,
let's be in lots of lines. So we were able to get some kind of pass that moved us to the front of the line. Um,
okay.
the hardest day I had there was we had reservations at this castle. It was some kind of Beauty and the Beast castle restaurant, and
Uh-huh.
we had the reservations like and we had the thing to fast track us through the line, but apparently we were
Mhm.
put into this reservation line. So we were in a long line with people that were all had reservations,
Oh,
and they
okay.
had these knights on the walls, like this they were armored knights or something like that.
Oh, gotcha, gotcha. Okay.
If they spoke to us, if they made sounds, because it was Beauty and the Beast. I don't even remember.
Uh-huh.
I remember that something about it triggered a completely terrified reaction in my son. And
Oh,
he
okay.
had a complete meltdown. I mean, just like spaghetti on the floor, kicking and screaming. And
Uh,
I could tell there was this woman behind me who was just scowling. And she had her 3 kids with
mm,
her. She was in a terrible mood. She was really snapping at all of her kids too, but she really just, I mean, I don't know what it was, but I could feel that she thought I was doing something really wrong. Because I was
yeah.
him. And we finally got to somewhere, and I was like, hey, is there, like, he's melting down. I was like, please, we've had a reservation for been in line for 20 minutes. Is there some way that we can just get seated? um
Yeah.
and they were like, oh, you're going to have to wait another 15 minutes, ma'am. And my son sort of kicked or something, and I backed up a little bit, and this woman
Uh-huh.
like shoved
No.
me, and I almost fell, but
Oh,
there was something about being shoved by, I'm going to get emotional,
oh no.
but just like being shoved by another mom, you know, and
Yeah.
realizing like she had no understanding of that situation. I wound up like crying at Disney World, which you're not supposed to do. And I I
They
went
kick you out.
I know. There's no crying at Disney World. Both me and my son were breaking all the Disney World rules. So we were both crying, and by the we went and sat on this rock, and when he looked at me and saw that I was crying, you could see he just went into like another level of bereft. Like
Oh, no.
like, you're crying too? And I was just like, it's okay. Sometimes everybody needs to cry. It's all right. We're just
Yeah.
gonna take a break right here. And I remember he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, it's okay, mommy, I'm your best friend. And that, of course, that made me
Yeah,
cry.
of course. Yeah.
But it was just that was something else. And it was just like, I think that experience was this thing where I was like, oh, I can't do it. Like, I think there's a lot of things that I I like to stick my flag in them and be like, look, I did this, you know, I'm a
Oh,
single mom.
yeah.
My son has this thing. I still did it. And that felt like I couldn't do it. It was like, I need help.
Yeah.
I need a partner. That was
Yeah.
hard time. But then same, same trip, we went into a different
Mm.
restaurant thing. It was this thing where they had all these cars and you like sit in the car to watch a movie. And my son was having
Okay.
or kind of react every place we went. Every place we went, he would have this meltdown about something. And in that place,
Oh,
I
okay.
remember one of the Disney people came over to us and gave us this like Tinkerbell pin and was like,
Mm-hmm.
this is a special pin. You cannot buy this in stores. Uh, but we get to, as Disney people, we like get to choose
Mm-hmm.
a special child every day to give something special
Mm-hmm.
to. This is your special thing. And that was so sweet. My son did not receive it, but I did. He still had a
Like,
meltdown.
take it for yourself. You're like, you don't know how much I needed that.
I was like, can I take the Tinkerbell pin? It's for me. So that was an interesting thing. I mean, a lot of it, I think, was I was trying to force this experience of Disney. You know what I mean? Like I was like, oh,
Yeah.
we get to go on the rides, we get to go into these different things, and
Yeah.
that wasn't what gave him joy. Like finally, the last trip, we went to all four parks, and he had meltdown
Okay.
every single park we went to, every single ride, every time, every line, every restaurant, meltdown, meltdown,
Mm.
meltdown. And it was so expensive because I'd be like, oh, okay, let me try to calm you down with a Mickey Mouse pretzel, a pretzel shaped like Mickey Mouse, $20. It's just like it was just like being trapped in an airport price place, you know, and it's like everything
Yeah.
with him was so expensive. I mean, I hemorrhaged so much money. And like the strollers cost $80 a day or something like that. I mean, it was
Whoa.
crazy. I don't remember the exact price. It just felt like everything was
Yeah.
expensive. And the final day I finally like figured out what he wanted to do was like walk around and go into stores, like go into the gift shops and look at all the little
Okay.
trinkets on the shelves. And at Epcot, you just like you go from like village to village or city to city, and you can go into these
Mm-hmm.
little gift shops and you can buy stuff on the street. And as long as we weren't like in an enclosed space for too long, he was happy. He was so happy at Epcot.
There you go.
Where he still talks about it. It's like, I want to go back to Disney World. And I'm like, oh, it was a trauma for mom. Okay. I don't know. Now I
You
think
like start twitching.
I know. I'm like, I could maybe go back with him, but I think I would need to try to have a family member come meet me or something like that. I think I just bit off more
Yeah.
than I could chew trying to do it by myself.
Yeah. Well, and I think, yeah, Disney is, but I mean, I was going to say Disney is, I'm sure that you see all kinds of weird things. I don't have kids. And then thankfully, I don't know, I shouldn't say thankfully, but I'm not one of those adults with no kids who love Disney. So I have no reason to ever go to Disney. So I'm just like, yeah, you hear that it's happy. And you would think that they would think about some of that. I actually read an article just the other day that was about Disney where they were cracking down on those passes that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like apparently it was out on some Disney hack because I'm sure the things I hear about from people with kids that go to Disney of like you can buy or like pay a Disney concierge to like plan the best Disney. It's insane what people are doing with Disney, but
Yeah.
there's like sites that are like Disney hacks,
Mm-hmm.
and it went out on like those sites of how to scam the system and claim that you have the disability that would let you get closer to the front of the line to do it. So now they're cracking down on that and saying like, no, you have to actually prove that you're on the spectrum or something like that to where you don't have to stand in line. And of course, people are outraged, which is a weird hill to die on, to be outraged of like, you won't let me fake a disability anymore so that I don't have to stand in line.
Yeah.
Oh, crazy.
I mean,
But that,
I worked with kids with disability. I worked with mostly autism for like 2 years. I was a early childhood interventionist, and I know one of my families goes to Disneyland all the time. Like takes both of
Mm.
her sons are autistic, and she takes them there all the time. And it is a
Mm-hmm.
soothing. It's like if they're having a bad day at school, she'll pull them from school and take them to Disneyland. She lives
Oh,
in
really?
California, so she can just like take them all the time. And it's just what they do.
Oh,
So I think
yeah.
that can be a comfort for some kids, and that's just back to
Mm-hmm.
how everybody has a different experience with this.
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
difficult.
Sounds like it. And then you brought up like the great point of the other parents and
Mhm.
and things like that of having to navigate that, and you're already going through this kind of stressful moment, and then
Right.
instead of another parent being like, I've been
Mhm.
there, I can like they're now turning on you
Yeah.
and weirdly getting physical with
Yeah,
you.
that was what that blew my mind. And then when I turned around to look at them, just like the way their jaw kind of squared off, like you want to, I was just like, what is
uh
happening? It was so wild.
Yeah, you're like, lady, get a grip. So that's what I was gonna. So one of the things that I was gonna ask then too is like, what do you just kind of wish? Because I think across the board, and again, all of this, I've just got to, I cannot
Mhm.
caveat enough of saying this is all outsider information looking in. I don't have kids.
Mhm.
But across the board, traveling with kids is stressful. Traveling with
Yeah.
kids is chaotic and everything else. And there's lots. But again, when you have kind of then an extra, an added thing that you have to navigate with
Right.
this. So what is something that maybe you just kind of wish other people realized a little bit more, or other travelers, as you
Mhm.
know, about your situation, I guess.
A few, I guess, like it's so interesting. I think like during the tantrums, I wish that people
Mm.
were, um, would not like glare.
Mm.
Like glare and like be like, what's wrong with her? If you don't have something comforting to offer, I wish people would just ignore it. Um,
Mm.
and I think also recognizing that like I can't subdue it. Like sometimes I can't.
Yeah.
Sometimes kids cry and you can't alleviate it. And then the other thing is I've sometimes had people come up and offer me things and I'm like, I can't, that's not gonna work. Like
Gotcha.
sometimes people will
Yeah.
offer food, like, oh, do you want to give them this piece of food? And I'm like, oh, he doesn't eat, like
Uh,
the extent to which my son's diet is restricted because he won't tolerate certain textures or flavors is pretty high. So it's like if you're trying to give me
uh,
something to get, does he want a granola bar? Does he want this piece of chocolate? It's like, no, he's gonna that's gonna make it worse. Like I appreciate, but now
gotcha.
you're making me have to tell no while he's having a meltdown. And I'd rather. I think I think offering words of comfort I always appreciate, like, "Oh, yeah, I've been there. It's okay." That kind of thing is nice, but I
Yeah.
don't need somebody to fix it or to expect me to fix it. I think that was something that I felt. And then sometimes it was just like a lot of stuff to carry. I mean, I'd have when he was younger, now it's much easier, but when he was like 2, I would have a suitcase and a backpack with like all the bottles and uh or well, I guess 2, maybe he wasn't on the bottle, but I'd have like
Mm-hmm.
snacks and diapers. He was in diapers for a while. And then I'd have the car seat, which so it's suitcase, backpack. In the backpack I'd have to have both my personal backpack for my like computer, laptop, etc., and then his
Mm-hmm.
backpack for the diaper bag and the car seat. And it's like, how do you carry a
Uh,
suitcase, 2 backpacks, a car seat, and a 2-year-old? You
oh
know?
yeah.
This like wheelie device where I would put my son in the car seat and then I could wheel the car seat, and then I could slide one
Okay.
of the backpacks over the wheelie thing, and then I could wear the other
Okay.
backpack. So that was great. But then when going through security, I'd have to take
Oh no.
it was security was crazy. Trying to like take off my shoes, get the computer out of the bag, put it in its separate thing, get my son out of the car seat, which sometimes would result in him already having a hard time, especially if he's already asleep. And then the car seat is like a crazy thing. You have to like walk it through or bring it to somebody and I forget exactly what it was.
Yeah, okay.
I had one instance where I was going through security and like the TSA people were so hard on me. They were so like, ma'am, you got to do that. You know what I mean? Like you have to take him out of the car seat. The car seat needs to be laid this way. And I'm like holding this like tantruming kid, you know, and trying to like rearrange.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm dropping the car seat. I'm dropping my bags. And there was just no help. They were just like watching me like, oh God. And it was just felt so, unsympathetic, you know, just there's an element of like, you know, if you see me drop a backpack, like you can help me pick it up.
Yeah. It's okay. You can pick it up.
Just like soften the way that you're talking to me if I'm carrying a crying child, you know. I don't know. So that was really tough. I think just that juggle, that was the hardest thing, is going through security is an insane thing. And I don't know why they can't make it simpler. I think there is some way that you can do something where you register as someone coming to the airport with an autistic something like that, but I've never done that. I'm so bad at those administrative tasks.
Yeah. Yeah. Because a lot of times it's like you've got to think about it 6 months to a year in advance, and you're just like, oh, well, I don't have anything planned right now. So, and then the trip comes, and you're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's no way. I don't think I've ever scheduled something 6 months in advance.
No.
So but yeah, I think it's like the mapping out like what you're gonna bring, how you're gonna hold it all. And then I would also, oh yeah, I had the 2 backpacks, the rolly with the car seat. Sometimes I'd also have the stroller because I need to bring a stroller, and then I'd also bring a pillow so that I could lay him on my lap with a pillow so he wouldn't melt down in the plane. Then there's just like things like, okay, how do I time it right so I can give him some milk or honey or gum, depending on his age, when we're taking off landing so that his ears don't cause him to tantrum. So that was another thing. I'm trying to think about other stuff. I mean, as a single mom, I was never breastfeeding. At 2, he was done. So that was nice. When he was a baby, there was also the breastfeeding factor, which was always like awkward. How do I breastfeed on the plane?
Did you ever get any like, again, travelers around you for any of this stuff being?
No, people were pretty cool about it. I mean, I also, when I was breastfeeding, I had a husband who would sit on the other side. So the 3 of us would take up the whole row. It wasn't like I was so exposed. I think I did one trip by myself for my grandfather's funeral with the baby. And I remember that was really hard. It was really scary because we were sitting on the plane. It took so much for me to get him on the plane with me. And then they made some announcement about how like the plane was over full and like the last 3 passengers to check in would have to be asked to leave and get off the plane and like wait for the next one or something like that. And I remember, or they were gonna lottery call 3 names and come off, and they were like, we'll pay you this amount of money or something like that. And I was like, please don't do this to me. You know, like I can't, holding the baby, getting all my stuff, getting off the plane, waiting for the next flight. And then also I'm going to my grandfather's funeral. Like I'm going to miss the funeral and have this it was just, that was crazy.
So I'm hoping, you didn't get called.
Yeah. Everything that was scary about travel for me involved being alone with my son. The moment I was with other family that knew us, it was like, oh, it was such a relief, you know. And I think that if I'd had a co-parent, it would have been a lot easier. The process might have been less stressful. But at the same time, like there is something nice about getting to make my own decisions and being in the driver's seat in terms of everything that we're doing. Sometimes I would get into like back and forths with my ex-husband about like we should go here, we should go there, you know, how early we should leave, that kind of thing. So it was kind of have it all be my choice. But it's so nice to be with family. with a child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. And but also it's like you do say something that's really interesting, and I don't know what word I want to say. It's telling a bit of what's going on like in the world right now. Like it should be that travel is that we're going out, we're meeting new people, we're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be immersing ourselves in other cultures and learning things and this and that and all this, and it's like everything is so individualized right now. And like you say, it's like the scariest thing to me is like being alone with my son, like, so knowing that I'm on my own and none of these thousands of people around me are going
Mm-hmm.
to help. If
Yeah.
anything, they might actually make it a little bit worse.
Yeah. That is scary.
Yeah. So I'm
I
just
mean,
like, that's.
yeah. He's at a very different place now. He's really easy to travel with right now. I mean, he's
Oh,
not,
nice. Yeah.
he gets his iPad, will, sometimes we'll eat food he's really well behaved in restaurants. And
Yeah.
it's just fun to be with him. He gets nervous.
Yeah.
He gets very nervous about being alone. That's the only hard thing. Like if I'm like, okay, we're at the gate, you sit with the bags, I'm gonna go to the
Oh, yeah.
back. This happened the last time we went on a trip. I left him with the bags and food. Like
Mm-hmm.
I left him with a bunch of candy or something. I was like, you have your food. I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. And when I got back, he was just sobbing, just sitting by
Oh,
himself,
no.
like crying so loud, and I just felt terrible. And it's like there are all these adults just sitting watching him. It's like
Yeah.
nobody thought to just be like, hey, it's okay, you're doing fine.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's just wild to me that's a response. But I mean, I guess people
Yeah.
are like, oh, I don't want to mess with someone else's kid. I guess that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's just, I think that there's something sad to me about how atomic parenting has become in our society. It's
Mm.
so, and by atomic I mean like so separate. We're so isolated, and there's so little there's such a little sense of like community around
Yeah.
children. And I kind of get it. It's like people can be so finicky about like who talks to their kids, and how what they're, I don't know, just like there are different styles of
Yeah.
parenting, and they're very strong opinions about it. So I can understand how people are, afraid to intervene. But it's pretty tough.
Yeah.
And if I'm on the plane and I leave my son in
Mm-hmm.
the seat on the plane and I go to the bathroom on the plane, he will also cry and have a meltdown. So trying to
Uh,
bring him with me into that
and then the
little
flight attendants are like, you
into that
can't
little
stand in the aisle.
yeah, I
Yeah.
know. I know I have to take, like, he can't even stand in the aisle. He'll get upset if he's in the aisle. He has to
Uh,
come with me into that little cube and stand up
mm.
against the door while I'm trying to go to the it's like yeah, that's crazy. Such a tough
Yeah.
but I don't think that's a neurodivergent. Well, maybe, I don't know, maybe there's something about difficulty with self-soothing and being left alone.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
but
I think that's part of it too, is it's not a clear cut, like you say. And of course that's why, people talk about it's a spectrum, because it's not like you can say, oh, this is how this person's going to act, this is how this person's going to act, and things like that.
right.
Um, so that's what, like, kind of broadening it out a little bit. And again, just your experience or what you've thought. So again, for listeners who may not be that familiar with like neurodivergence or anything
Mhm.
like that, essentially it's, really it's just people's brains are wired differently, and it just happens to be that the world is
Mhm.
planned for people who aren't like that. And so
Mhm.
it really is just truly, it's someone who is on the spectrum is just kind of logic, and the way that they navigate is different, and it doesn't always fit into how things are set up. So exactly, like I'm thinking, again, this is just all of, I'm not an expert on any of this, but it is just the idea of like Disney and standing in lines and stuff like that, and all of the flashing lights and things. So, like, just kind of as you've navigated travel as anything, have you ever thought like, why couldn't we just do this? Why could, even like your security
I
examples
think
are of like,
security.
why haven't we changed
Yeah.
up some things?
I really feel like with security, you should be allowed to keep the kid in the car seat. That just seems crazy to me. They can swab around them, like they can,
Yeah,
do this stuff. I just don't understand why you would ask a parent to take the child out of the car seat, put the car seat on that little like thing,
yeah,
great thing. I mean, I
and
guess
then act annoyed when when the kid doesn't like being disrupted.
yeah, yeah. I think that's the security stuff. I feel like there's so much about the security stuff that just doesn't make sense to me. Like sometimes you take off your
Yeah,
shoes, sometimes you don't. It's like I don't.
right. I was noticing today because again, some of the things that it's like, it's just the unknown. When you, at the beginning, when you were talking about going to Disney, and you were saying that just everything was going to be new, and that was an interesting
Right.
thing that you were going to have to face, and that is one of the things, is it's just kind of the inability to kind of be able to adapt quickly, right?
Mhm.
And so that's what I noticed here in Long Beach, that they did. What I thought was pretty cool is they did like a practice run airport day.
Oh,
So they,
cool.
yeah, so they worked with an organization here who works with kids with autism,
Mhm.
and they all got to go to the airport, like in a special, and so then they learned like what you're supposed to do and how to get your ticket and get through security and everything else in
Oh.
like this non-stress situation, so that when they go, it won't be completely new
Right.
and the scary thing out there. So I was like, well, that's a nice little thing.
That's
And
very
again,
cool.
it's, yeah, it's one of those where it's like, yeah, just small steps.
Yeah, there's things that we would do. He goes to a school where all the kids have autism, all the kids are autistic, and we
Hmm.
have these stories that we'll read about before big thing. Like here's the story of what you're going to do the next day. So
Hmm.
I think talking to him and preparing him for, okay, we're going to be doing this and walking through the steps is helpful. That's obviously easier with an older child. I also feel like
Hmm.
one of the things that I love is that a lot of airports have like really interesting displays. Like LaGuardia is really cool. Las
Uh,
Vegas was super fun. He loved Las Vegas.
oh
We went,
yeah.
yeah, like the grown up Disney World was great. We
Yeah.
to Las Vegas. I was on two comedy festivals out there, and my mom met us at the airport, and then we stayed at a friend's house, and he has cousins out there that he got to see, and it was just like I think really I've found that as a parent to a neurodivergent kid, you really have to see what they're into, and you have to do the things they're in,
Mm.
you know. So he's not gonna come with me to something that I'm interested in. But we can have a great time doing the stuff that he loves. We
Yeah.
went to the Luxor. There's this like pyramid thing that has this thing called the Fun Dungeon, like a big arcade underneath. He got to play all the
Hmm.
arcade. That went really well. We did virtual reality, like things that like move inside of a
Oh yeah.
together. That went really well. We and which was surprising, that could have been scary, but he did great with
Yeah.
it. We ate a bunch of food, we walked around to different places, like it was like this whole spectacular, let's look at this, let's look at that. We got,
Yeah.
but it was really driven by him. Where do you want to go next?
Hmm.
This way or that way? You want to go to
Yeah.
Paris, or do you want to go to, I forget, they had like different, you want to go to Paris or Germany? They have different
Yeah.
little I don't think there is a Germany. I don't think I can't remember,
I,
but I think they do. I know they have a Paris.
I I was like, well, it's been a long time since I've been to Vegas, but maybe.
Yeah, which is like it was cool
Yeah.
to just be like, oh, this is how you do it. You just got to listen to him,
Yeah.
and let him call the
Yeah.
shot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost, I mean, it's like you think about when there's some things like Disney, right? Where everything, it's a good and a bad thing, I guess. depending on what your kid enjoys, because it's so programmed and so structured, and you can plan your day from the minute you wake up and what princess you're having breakfast with,
Right.
up until the final thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which again, yeah, for some kids that might be fantastic. For some, it's that structure that's just like could, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
for me,
Yeah.
Disney makes me stressed out to think of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty stressful. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'd have a different experience with it now. But I think
Yeah.
listening, because I think that what I did was I was like, oh, we need to have this experience. Like I spent all this
Oh,
money. We have to do the teacups. We have to do the blah blah blah. We have to go to the castle. We have to, and I was trying to
yeah.
make this experience of what I envisioned as like a good core childhood memory. And
Mhm.
I think what I needed to do, what I finally found my stride with the very last day, is just like let him do it. Let him call the shot. Like,
Mhm.
all he wants to do is like go inside of a gift shop and stare at all like the little crystal Beauty and the Beast trinkets and be like, "Ooh,
Yeah.
this is pretty. This one's even pretty." Like if that's what he wants to do, then we got to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have any do you have any good experiences, like good stories where you can, I don't mean like that
Yeah,
sounded bad when I said it. I'm like, do
no,
you have any,
absolutely.
but no,
I
like
think most
anything
of
that
my
stands
experiences
out.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
most of my
any
experiences are good. It's just they're
yeah.
not like interesting stories. It's like
Yeah.
we have a lot of seamless trips right now where he can carry his own bag. Um
Mhm.
when we went to Las Vegas, we had an overnight flight with like a connection, and
Mhm.
we we had like this 5-hour layover in the middle of the night, like 12 to 5
Mhm.
or something like that. And he was so sweet. He came and um they I forget where the layover was, but they had these like big seat things. And
Mhm.
I I remember asking some person at one of the desks, like, is it okay if we just sleep here? And he was like, oh,
Yeah.
the staff is going to make you leave the airport. You have to leave at night. You
Oh.
stay here. And I was like, we don't have anywhere to go, and we have a connecting flight in like 5 hours. Like, we don't have anywhere.
Right.
And he was like,
Yeah.
just you can sleep there and see what happens. They might try to make you leave, but you can try. And my son
Yeah.
fell asleep right away, and we just like cuddled on this there was like some kind of padded seat thing that was long. So we were able to like
Oh,
sleep.
nice.
And then it was a little hard, walking through the airport at like 3 in the morning, and he said he had a tummy ache, so we had to like stop.
Mhm.
That's a lot of what it is. I think so much of having a good time with somebody who's neurodivergent just involves listening to them.
Mhm.
If we're
Yeah.
walking and he says, "Hey, can we stop? I have something in my shoe." I stop.
Mhm.
There's no reason
Right.
to be like, "Oh, deal with it. We'll be fine. Just keep, we're gonna be late. Let's go." I just have found like I
Yeah.
really just have to stop when he wants to stop. If he's like, "Oh, I need to take off this shirt because there's a tag in it." "Oh, let's to get that shirt off. That tag is awful." You know what I mean? You just like
Yeah.
listen. I don't know if you've seen Love on the Spectrum, that
I
TV show.
haven't. I've seen the clips, but I've never actually
Okay.
watched the episode.
Great, great show. But I've noticed that like the relationships that seem to be the strongest are where there's like one where the partners understand that about each other. There's this one
Yeah.
scene where the guy is trying to get dressed, and she doesn't know, but he's going to be proposing to her. He's getting
Oh,
dressed,
okay.
and his socks aren't working. He can't find the right socks. And the
Okay.
girl is pacing in the hotel room going, "Oh gosh, this is terrible. We need to get you the right socks." And they wound up going to the store and buying him new socks, and then he
Uh-huh.
proposed.
Oh,
But I think just like really feeling that like whatever the person that if it's a neurodivergent person and they're having a struggle with something, like
mhm.
really acknowledging that is awful. That is a struggle, and let's fix it together. I think just makes
Yeah.
everything so smooth. It is not
Yeah.
the way that I grew up. I did not grow up with me being like, "Oh, I really want this candy," and my parents being like, "Okay, you can have one." You know what I mean?
Right.
It was very like, "No, you don't need that." There's a
Yeah.
big thing in my family, and I think it's multi-generational of, "Oh, you don't want that." I want to be
Oh,
a
yeah.
hairdresser. No, you don't want to be the hairdresser. You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And so it's a big reprogramming, I think, to
Yeah.
be, um, the more loving and the more patient that I am with him, the more at ease he is. And we both just kind of get
Yeah.
leveled up into a more positive experience. So I have, I would say
Yeah.
most, and I travel a lot. Most of my travel experiences with him are positive, like overwhelmingly
Yeah.
positive.
Yeah. Well, and I think that like what you talk about is, I mean, that's just an important thing. And everyone is kind of learning too that it does come down and you know we've talked about it for years, but it does come down to communication, and it
Yeah.
is how you talk to someone, how you actually listen to someone,
Mhm.
and no matter who you're talking to, that is a reprogramming. It's the like exactly like what you say of the well, I was raised that way is not an excuse,
Mhm.
of how kind of you're not actually paying attention to how to meeting someone's needs, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, I think that kind of goes into your talking too about like the other parents and things like that. It's like the help may be better received and things like that if you ask a few questions first, if you say
Mhm.
like how is it that I can actually help you instead of being like it looks like you need my opinion on this.
Right, right. I mean, it's also that's challenging too, because sometimes it's like I don't know. I one time he
Mm.
woke up. We were on a flight, and he woke. We were first class. We were flying first class, and it was a
Ooh, la
transcontinental
la.
flight. Yeah, very fancy. And I was so relieved because I could really like position him to be comfortable. But he woke up in the middle of the night screaming, and we could not figure out why. And because we were in
Mm.
first class, the flight attendants were particularly eager to get him to shut up. You know,
Oh, I
we
thought you were
were
gonna say they were so nice.
yeah, no, no. I mean, they were nice, but they were also just like, make it stop, you know? And
Oh,
they were giving me all these suggestions that were not gonna work. And I knew that they weren't gonna work. It was so interesting. They were
yeah.
like, here, can you give him this? Can you give him that? Can we do this? Sometimes with my son, I do blah, blah, blah. Like they were saying all these things. And I
Mm.
was because and my initial reaction was the state of panic because I felt like I didn't
Mm.
belong in first class. I couldn't afford first class. I got there on points and my mom helped me or something like that. And so I
Yeah.
was feeling like such an imposter to begin with. And then and all in
Yeah.
my head, like, oh, there's all these fancy people on here. They spent all this
Yeah.
money and my son is screaming. And
Oh,
it's 2 o'clock in the
yeah.
morning and he's not going to stop and I can't get him to stop. And in my head, trying to apply their suggestions was such a mess. And then I finally just like dropped
Mm.
my body and I was like, okay, what is my intuition as a mother? What is my intuition as somebody who knows my son? And I had to really ignore them, which was hard because I knew that they were, trying to help, but I was like, please just let me. And I forget what it was, but it
Yeah.
was really just like, I stopped trying to do stuff and I
Mm.
just held him while he was crying. And I was just
Oh.
like, yeah, I know it's really hard. And, just like kind of dropping into that
Mm-hmm.
space instead of like, sweetie, you have to stop or okay, I'm going to give you
Right.
this. Here's some honey. Here's a treat. You know what I mean? Like that kind of
Yeah.
just feeding into the anxiety because I'm anxious. The moment that I dropped into my body and was able to come into a calm space, I could just kind of like, it's like a tuning fork. You're a parent, you're a tuning fork. You hold a certain frequency and you let your kid match that frequency. And so
Oh, yeah.
I think that's my biggest piece of parenting advice for any child is to really pay
Mm-hmm.
attention to where you are emotionally as a parent. If you're having trouble with your kids, if you're feeling like, gosh, if you're feeling angry, you got to check in and take care of that. And it doesn't mean that you can't feel angry, but
Right.
one thing that really works with my son is I tell him what I'm feeling. If I'm like, oh no, I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting frustrated because you didn't answer me, he'll respond to that way faster than if I'm like, can you get on your shoes, please? If he hears it in my,
Oh,
it's a shock to him and he gets overwhelmed. If I tell him in a
yeah.
calm, oh, I'm starting to feel frustrated, or oh no, I'm on mute, you didn't hear me. He's like, what? Oh, okay. He'll respond to that. So,
Oh, yeah.
and I think that there's a lot with with him, and I don't know if this is true of all kids with neurodivergence, although I kind of feel like there is an aspect of this. There is a
Mm-hmm.
deep need for a calm
Mm-hmm.
parent. Like, I have to be calm. He needs to feel that I am in control and I am okay. And not in control in a sense that I'm trying to make
Gotcha.
him do something, but just like I am in
Yeah.
control of myself. And when I am at ease with myself, he can,
Gotcha.
I think, receive that and be better able to follow my instructions, if I'm telling him to do something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. This kind of the stable fixture there when everything else maybe kind of feels a little chaotic, as long
Yeah.
as you have it, and then it's going to be okay. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had one experience with another. I was traveling and there was this woman. She was a physician. She was a doctor
Mm-hmm.
and she had been featured in something. She was a really wonderful doctor. I think she was primary care or something like that. And she also had a background in like Eastern medicine. And she did
Okay.
something with his face. Like he was
Mm-hmm.
crying. She did something. She just touched him in ways that were like based on his chi or something like that. And it was amazing to watch him like melt in response.
Really?
Yes, and she was
Wow.
so wonderful to talk to, and I was so grateful that I sat beside her. Like I couldn't believe, sometimes you just have moments where you're like, there's a God. There's got to be a God. Because it was at the time he was so young and I was so stressed about being a young mom and not having a lot of
Uh-huh.
money and trying to navigate life with this child, and just to be seated next to this woman who was such a consummately generous person.
Yeah.
It was such a nice feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so that brings up kind of the next thing real quick, is if, like, we have gone come far from where we were as like a country, as a world, of recognizing neurodivergence, recognizing all kinds of things that people deal with and navigate on a daily basis, and trying to be more accommodating to them, trying to be more empathetic, really, I
Mhm.
think, is the primary important part. um, so your son is 9 years old. So you've been doing this for 9 years, and uh, where do you think we've come? Where do you think we're going? Where do you think, like, you brought up maybe some alternative
Mhm.
ways of dealing and coping with it that doctor brought up?
Mhm.
I don't know.
Oh yeah, I mean that would be so cool. I don't think that that's mainstream at all. I don't
Yeah.
know if I don't know if it will be. I think that that's such an interesting question. I feel like I think there's such a each person has such a different experience with it.
Hmm.
I don't really feel like there's a big trend in terms of where things are going. I think each person has their own experience, and it's that there's something unfortunate about that to me. Because my son goes
Yeah.
to a school where all the kids are autistic. And
Hmm.
for me, because of the way that I just navigated the system, or because of fate, or I'm not fate, but like because of not fate, I mean more chance, because of chance, the
Hmm.
opposite of fate. Uh, I I had it work out where the city of New York pays his tuition for him to go to this private school,
Oh,
and I've met
okay.
other parents with kids in the same grade who'd have to pay for
Hmm.
it. They just don't have that assistance, or they have to get lawyers, and
Oh,
it's
wow.
just like
Yeah.
I think everybody has their own experience. It's not, I don't think it's trending. I don't think
Hmm.
that we're all like and I don't think that we're moving towards a more equitable world. I don't think we are. In any respect. I feel like
Yeah.
especially with neurodivergence, I've noticed in comedy
Hmm.
more and more often people are using autism as a joke, or as like
Yeah.
it's just like a throwaway thing that's not real. And I hear people
Hmm.
use, slurs about autism, and you know what I mean? Like I just feel like it's
Hmm.
I think it's become a like last resort form of, if I'm everything is censored, everything else is censored,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go here. Like I obviously can't
Yeah.
talk about politics, race, gender. So I'm just gonna talk about, how I look autistic or something like that.
Yeah. Or how,
It's,
or my
yeah,
girlfriend says I'm autistic because,
right. Yeah.
I see that here in the scene in LA all the time. And like, yeah, LA, I'm going to call you out. You're so great about everything. But
Mhm.
I see that even in quote, these safe spaces, of open mics, which I have lots of issues about calling them that too, and doing that type of thing to where we just segment every single group, so that you're just talking into an echo chamber. I was like, that's not
Yeah.
comedy, but that's what I've been noticing too, is exactly like what you're saying. There's been so many times when people will start to talk about autism, and exactly like they use it as a slur, as like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I'm just autistic. And I'm just like, how? But I was thinking that same thing that you said, of like, it's these people that want to be talking about all kinds of other things, but because it's
Right.
been kind of mainstreamed enough to where you can't say that about that, so now
Mhm.
it's all kind of fallen back on autism.
Right.
And yeah, and I don't hear many people speaking up about it, of saying like, hey, you can't do that either. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I did an open mic in LA where I went up and I talked about my son being autistic, and then
Hmm.
this guy that followed me said that he had two kids, and then he said they weren't the R word. Like that was he looked at me and he's like, unlike your kid, they're not.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh
And I was
no.
in shock. Like I was like, how can you say that? And I was so
Yeah.
impressed. I was like, how old are your kids? And then he told me their ages like 9 months, and they were close together. It was like one was a year and a half, one was 9 months. I was like, oh, they might not have received their diagnosis yet. You just might not know yet, but welcome to the, you know what I mean? Like you have no,
Yeah,
but it was just, I get that a lot. And for a while, it made me really scared to talk about autism on stage because I thought I would
I
get
can
roasted
see
by
that.
these 20-year-old comedians who don't know
And
anything. But
right.
then this really wonderful comedian pulled me aside while I was in LA, Jeff Keller, who had opened
Hmm.
for a long time for Paul Mooney. And he
Mm.
pulled me, he's a wonderful comedian. And he pulled me aside and he said, you know, the most interesting things that you've talked about are your son. He was like, you should
Uh-huh.
really get into talking about your son. And he worked on some jokes with me, like helped me with tags and things.
Hmm.
And it was such great advice. So I feel like, you know,
Yeah.
if somebody's watching this and they're thinking about comedy, they're thinking about doing comedy, and maybe they have a neurodivergent person in their life, you
Yeah.
can talk about it. Just be careful with the open mics and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
receive the open micer suggestion. The suggestions that's coming from more pro level comedians is a lot more helpful. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's just safe advice for a lot of topics in open mics too.
yeah.
I'm trying. Let's see. Hopefully, we've opened everybody's eyes a bit about what it's like to travel with a child who is neurodivergent. Or if you have a child who is neurodivergent and you are anxious about traveling, hopefully we gave you some good ideas, good suggestions, and if nothing else, just let you know that you're absolutely not alone out there.
Mm.
So before we wrap up though, Katie, is there any place that our listeners can find you and your comedy?
Oh, yes, definitely. Please look at my Instagram, which is Katie Blunt Comedy. Um, and then I have shows that I run. I have two shows that I run. I have a psychic reading comedy show where I do psychic readings of
Mm.
audience members in between comedians. And then I have a that's a whole nother thing that we didn't unpack. And then I have a milk and cookies comedy show, which is entirely family friendly, clean comedy, and we are sponsored by Crumble Cookies, and they give us vouchers that we raffle off at the end of every show. And it's so fun to bring my son and to have other kids in the audience, and I'll have neurodivergent kids come to those shows, and I'll have them sometimes read jokes off of my phone and bring up other comedians. I'll have them come on stage, you know what I mean? So it's a
Oh,
really
nice.
family friendly, participatory, warm comedy show, which I think is
Yeah.
pretty unique.
All right. Yeah, there you go, folks. Check her out. Uh, and for more deep dives into all things tourism, be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And you can follow us on Instagram at You're a Tourist. And until then, remember, you can call yourself whatever you'd like, but at the end of the day, you're a tourist and it's okay. The first step to getting better is admitting it. All right.